As Jim says, I love lettering. It keeps me out of trouble. Please welcome the legend, Jim Parkinson.
I was interested in doing some late 19th century script, some bottom-heavy script, and I decided I'd make a logo for myself. I started working on it, and I started working on it, kept working on it, and I really wasn't thinking about it, but like during the course of doing this, I changed the name of my business to Parkinson Type Design. So here it is. It's an exercise. I finished it. I've been doing this for a long time. This is me in like 1945, sitting on the front porch of my house in Richmond, California. Across the alley from us, there was a lettering artist. His name was Abraham Lincoln Paulson. This is his business card. And he did like lettering on, degrees from people graduating from high school and all that stuff. But then he had a show that he did, upside down and backwards lettering, number lettering. It hardly made any sense to me because I was still learning the alphabet. But I would go over and sit in his studio and watch him work, and he would entertain me with it. So what I came away from Paulson with was like, I just thought it was fun. I thought it was wonderful, the stuff that he was doing. You can see numbers on the left, upside down and backwards. It's somewhat readable. Well, I was 5, so everybody was old. I don't think so. I think he was probably just a regular middle-aged guy. But like I say, when you're 4, But anyway, I spent a lot of time watching him work, and I thought it seemed like a lot of fun. I didn't do anything with it. I went to Arts and Crafts, the College of Arts and Crafts. This is a woman named Carol Purdy. She taught the only lettering class that College of Arts and Crafts offered. She had been a merchandise illustrator at Livingston's department store before she became a lettering teacher. We'd worked I can see that moment right there. We worked with carpenter pencils, trying to reproduce the lettering on the Trajan column. And Mrs. Purdy would come up and hoover over you like that, and she would say, after a while, "Jim, that E looks awfully sad." Or, "That's a really happy S." And I loved that. That's the only class that I had, that's the only lettering class I had in all of college. And what she taught me was the personalities of letters, like, the way a letter stands upright, or the way that letter slouches, or the way a letter seems happy, or the way a letter seems angry. So between Mr. Paulson teaching me that lettering was fun, and Mrs. Purdy teaching me that they were all like little people, I was like ready to go. When I got out of Arts and Crafts, I went out with my portfolio to San Francisco and tried to get a job in an advertising agency or something. But the only things that were available were like a sharpening some guy's pencil, or like pouring coffee for somebody, being some kind of assistant. I didn't want that. I wanted to do art. So I went to Kansas City, and I took, they had an orientation class, and I worked in the orientation class. Painted like rabbits, painted Santa Clauses, painted a rural scene featuring a barn, painted all the things that they wanted me to paint. After about a month, the guy that ran the class called me up to the front and said, "Jim, you're not cutting it." And I'm just going like, wait a minute, I just moved back here from California, and you're telling me like I'm done? And he says, we think there might be a place for you in the lettering department. And I went, well, great, because like I don't like the rabbit thing anyway, So I started working in the lettering department. And I could just do these little things, just like sketch them out in pencil and ink them on one piece of paper and like do them like a half hour a piece, an hour a piece. And in the 1960s on greeting cards, it was just what they wanted. When I was there, my boss, Myron McVeigh, who was a fabulous lettering artist, managed to talk them into buying a typositor machine. It's really a Rube Goldberg apparatus. All kinds of like handles to turn and things that move around and stuff. But it was a way to set type. I started like getting like a little more serious. This is like what I used to call key line. It's like a piece of tracing paper that's got everything about as tight as I can get it before I ink it on the light table. This is Herman Zoff. I wasn't in the lettering department for more than like a month before my boss had managed to convince HALLMARK to bring Herman Zoff in as a consultant. So I spent like about 4 months with Herman. It's just me and my boss and Herman. It was pretty cool. This is the typeface I was working on. Actually, they still use it now. They've digitized it. But when I finished it, we didn't have any protocol for naming fonts or whatnot. So when somebody asked me what it was named, I told them it was, I don't know. I don't know. And so they called it I don't know. And the one underneath it is I don't know, fat face. So I remember this. This is how I met Herman. I was working on this, and Myron said, Jim, I'd like you to meet Herman Zoff. Show him what you're working on. So he was looking at what I was doing and like not laughing, it was pretty cool. And he asked me what the name of it was. And I told him. And he gave me this little smile that meant we were friends. He understood. He understood. And so I don't still know him, but I knew him for many years after he left HALLMARK. We'd run into each other at a type conference or something. And I learned a lot from him. I don't letter like he letters, but I learned a lot of principles of lettering and type design from Herman. These are my tools from HALLMARK. I still have them. If I ever do analog, I use them. The box is just a miscellaneous batch of pen points. The second thing down is a tube of replacement pencil leads. The third one down is my mechanical pencil, which in 1965, I taped it and taped it again and kept taping it until it fit my hand just perfectly. And it's still taped with the same tape. I can pick it up today and I feel completely at home. Ah, this is my pencil. And the pen down below is Herman Zoff gave Myron and I both one of these pens, which is what he was using. And I still have it. And that when I do anything analog that's ink, that's my pen. This is Rob Roy Kelly. Rob Roy Kelly happened to be in Kansas City at the same time that I was at HALLMARK and Herman was at HALLMARK. And there was a guy in the art department at HALLMARK named David Noblette. And he and I became friends, and we would sometimes walk home to work together because we lived near each other. And after work one day, we were having a beer at his apartment, and he had a freelance job on a drawing board. And I went to look at it, and it was that book, American Wood Type. He was like freelancing for Rob Roy Kelly, pasting up his book. So I got to meet Rob Roy Kelly, and I got to go over see him at the Art Institute, and I got to go through his collection of type specimen books, look at his type. He wasn't very friendly, but he was like accommodating. And I just sort of fell in love with wood type. This is there were lots of, I started driving around to little country shops, print shops and whatnot, trying to buy wood type, and there was never anything interesting that I could buy. But like, I traced this out of some of his specimen books, and I cut it out of linoleum, just because I wanted to make it and see if I could make it print. So those letters are probably about an inch and a quarter high. Okay, I can do this. So I did it like crazy. These were all alphabets I carved out of linoleum. And pretty soon other people were coming over saying, would you carve one of these for me? And it turned into a little business. When I left Kansas City, I was feeling the pull of like what was going on the West Coast. And there was really not much more that I was going to learn at HALLMARK. I did this poster in Kansas City. It's like a kind of a mashup between Robert Kelly's wood type and some kind of like psychedelic blah blah. This is my first newspaper logo. I did this when I got back to the Bay Area. I ran into some hippies at a party, and they were going to start a newspaper, and they were only going to publish the good news. This part of my life was like really, really, really crazy. I was doing a lot of this and that. And living hand to mouth and not knowing where to go for jobs. You know, like there was no internet. You know, you would look through the yellow pages at listings and you don't know anything about who's in there or anything. So I started going to parties and getting together with my old arts and crafts friends and stuff, and just pitching myself to anybody who was drunk enough to listen. This job here, a good time manual, was a couple of guys who were like doing a listing of fun places for young people to go and party. And I got the job out of a classified ad in the Oakland Tribune. And I phoned these guys up, and they gave me their address and said, come on over. And I went over, and it was a fraternity house at University of California. And the guys were two fraternity brothers. And they hired me to do the thing. And I did it. And they came back a few years later, and I did another cover for them. They did a second edition. I don't know what happened to C.J. Smith, but Russell Riera saved up enough money to like open his own restaurant on Solano in Berkeley for a while. This was just a guy I knew was doing some work for them and wanted some lettering, so I did it. They had a warehouse. The Creedence Clearwater had a warehouse on 4th Street near, forget the name of it. Never mind. It's in Berkeley. It's down in Berkeley where the warehouses are. They had like a nice little warehouse with like a basketball court on the downstairs, and then upstairs like a pool table and all their gold records and some offices and stuff. So I would like take my sketches down there and shoot baskets and like have them look at my work. And I don't know. This was made in parts so that they could use it in a bunch of different ways, like with press kits and on posters and this and that. This is a typeface that I did for Adobe. But the reason I did it is I'm a lettering artist, and there was no lettering artist at that particular time that didn't get asked to do this kind of lettering. So like I kept like, I have a couple characters from one job and a couple more characters for another job, and eventually I had enough to like pitch it as a font. And somebody Adobe was interested. And so this font is called Mojo. This was like a really weird party one. I don't remember where I met the guy. I don't remember where I met the guy that gave me the job. And I did meet the Doobie Brothers, but I was so screwed up that I don't really remember it. The type specimen book down below, that lettering, that Nebbiolo lettering down at the bottom is exactly where I got the Doobie Brothers lettering from. I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but you know, you just kind of keep sketching until things start going right for you. So the thing about the hippie lettering is that, like, it didn't pay that well. The check was always in the mail. It just wasn't good business. But like, the fact that these people were doing all these posters and attracting so much attention jarred the art directors and advertising agencies around here. And pretty soon they wanted fancy stuff, you know? They didn't want like any more universe, or they wanted lettering of personality. And it was all like, basically like charged from the kind of reception that the hippie lettering was getting. So this is I think this is for some kind of carnival ride or something. I don't even know. You really, I don't like to go out and see people, you know, like I don't want to go like driving around and talking to people about jobs. So when it's all over, you just go like, oh, I wonder what they used that for. And I like Google it. This is a logo for a hardware store in my neighborhood in exchange for hardware. This was just I had a teacher in art school that called this stringing beads. But what I did is I just did the Merry Christmas and Happy New Year without any banners, penciled it out and started drawing on it. And then as I was drawing, I was thinking, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do that. And I'd add a little bit more. I kept adding more. And it was just like, it's such an experiment that like, it kind of kept going. And I never like really did it. I mean, none of the lines are ruled or anything. They're all kind of like wobbly and screwed up because I was just kind of like sketching away to see what would happen. But anyway, there it is. This is for an advertising agency. It was for posters and whatever else. When I first got back from Kansas City, like 1969, I started going to like Mother Jones. I did a couple logos for Mother Jones, but I like worked at Clear Creek Magazine, the environmental perspective. People didn't know what an environment. People didn't know what that word meant back in 1969. So the Clear Creek went out of business. But Rolling Stone was one of the first places I went. In 1969, I met Bob Kingsbury, who was the first art director, then Jan Winter, the owner's brother-in-law, I think. And I started getting little spot illustrations and stuff. Then I started getting to do little lettering jobs for the magazine. It could all be better, but like, you know, things are done in a hurry. This was for Straight Arrow Publications. I think the name of the book was The Rolling Stone Style. I never did see the completed book cover. It's really funny, without the internet, you really out of touch with people. If there is a book cover, you've got to like phone them up and they've got to say, come on over, we might have somebody that knows where there is one, you know? So you just don't see stuff when it's printed. Roger Black came to Rolling Stone in about the early 70s, 74, 75. And he got my name from Dan Solo, a guy that used to be a typographer in the Oakland Hills. And he sent me a letter and asked me if I'd be interested in doing some typefaces for the magazine. And he wanted them based on this ATF version of Nicholas Jensen. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. The last thing I did was like a cartoon lettering for greeting cards. So my first sketches were really pretty clunky, and those are Roger's comments. But I kept sketching and sketching, and finally it started to come together a little bit. That's just what do they call those? Pentagram? Yeah, it's got all 26 letters in it. These are inked letters. They're like probably ink caps are probably about 3 or 3.5 inches tall. They made transfer type with it. Later they put it on Typositor. Now it's digitized. They're called Parkinson. They're owned by the Font Bureau. The reason they're called Parkinson is because they phoned me up one night. I was up in the mountains, in a cabin in the mountains, sitting at a little campfire, and there was a little tweet, tweet, tweet noise coming from the cabin, and I went, looked around inside, and it turned out to be the telephone, which hadn't rung because it was only there for emergencies. And it was somebody from Rolling Stone, and somehow they'd got that number, and they wanted to know if I'd help them with the name, because they were getting ready to release it. And we're not sure if we want to call it Jagger or Elvis, or, they had all these names of like entertainers. And I went out and talked to my friend at the campfire and said, what do I do? And she said, call it Parkinson. Jagger doesn't need any help from you. So I did, and now they've been like, I've had a chance to refine them when they were at the Font Bureau, and add some more fonts. So there's now 10 of those fonts. The top is the first Rolling Stone logo. It was done by Rick Griffin, one of the really famous poster artists in San Francisco. And when the magazine was about to come out, they talked to Rick and they said, we're going with it, and Rick said, well, wait a minute, it's just a sketch. And they said, no sweat, this is what we're using. So they used it, and they paid him sketch money for it. Then in I think 1972 or 73, the second logo was done. That was done by John Pastelli, who did the typeface Pastelli Roman. So Roger said, we're going to have you do the logo. And I freaked out. It's one of those kind of oh, this is going to kill my career. I'm going to screw this logo up, So you can see that I was scared. It's just my sketches were horrible. And Roger knew it. And Roger said, just go back to working on the fonts for a while. And then start using the fonts for your logo sketches. So the one on the bottom, here's another more elaborate one, but that one on the bottom was the one they picked for, right about the 10th anniversary, they moved back to New York City. They introduced their new logo on their 10th anniversary issue. They introduced the typefaces on their 10th anniversary issue. And they were in New York, and I was in Oakland. I got a phone call from Roger saying, we need a great big X. I said, what for? Well, they were doing this 10th anniversary issue, and they couldn't figure out, was it going to be Elvis on the cover? Was it going to be the Beatles on the cover? Who was going to be on the cover? Finally, Roger convinced them it would be just a great big X for 10. And they just told me it's going to be about 8.5 inches square. Make it like the logo. So I just drew it. I had no idea, exactly how it was going to come out. But there it is. So when the issue came out, I was back in New York at Rolling Stone. And we were all sitting around a conference table. It was really kind of cool because it was like the 30th floor or something. You could look out the window and there's a Plaza Hotel and the limousines and stuff. I'm going, oh, cool, this is great. And we were all looking at the magazine and patting ourselves on the back. And I scooted one across the table to Jan and asked him if he'd sign it for me. And he put these little curly cues on it. Said, Jim Parkinson, thanks for the logo. Best Jan. P.S. Alterations included. See, it hasn't been, it's just off the presses. It hasn't even been like out of the office yet. And Jan's already got like plans for like making it different. So about 2 years later, he called me out in California and asked me to do the fancy one. And I did the fancy one, and it just turned out that this was the issue that it debuted on. It's the only issue that they've ever published that didn't have any cover lines. Fred Woodward was the art director on the 20th. He asked for 2 X's. Actually, it wasn't that simple. I did a bunch of sketches with 2O, all different kinds of 2O, all different kinds of skinny X's next to each other. And this just sort of happened by accident. Some X's from the old 10th anniversary cover like accidentally fell on top of each other on my desk. And I went, oh. Here's a couple copies of the magazine, a couple covers, and all the type on those covers is from the series of 10 fonts that I did for them. And it's been like 40 or almost 50 years, and they still use it a lot in the magazine. And that's the logo. I finally got to clean it up. Somebody, I inked it, and somebody not too long ago, like 40th anniversary, sent me their mock-up for the cover, and the Rolling Stone logo was just going to be a big R-O, and it was all chopped up and stuff. And I thought, well, what's wrong? What's going on there? And it looks like what they did was like auto-traced it. So it looked horrible. And even it was even horrible at the small size that they've been using it on the magazine, but like nobody paid any attention. If you look at it with a loupe, it was horrible. So I talked them into letting me draw the R-O. And then something else came up. And I talked them into letting me draw the R-O-L-L. It just kind of kept on going until I redrew the whole thing. This is an ongoing obsession. I've got a couple ongoing obsessions I'll mention. SPUR Gothics, like styles like this that are in old sign painters' books. For me, this was like a very comfortable style to work with. It was very elastic. You could do different things with it. It was like my kind of go-to font when I was getting low on ideas. I would use a little of that, the word pharmacy, for instance. This is a book cover. Then one day I got a phone call from Roger, and he's in Washington, D.C., and he says, Jim, we're going to do the circus logo. I'm going oh, great. He's pulling my leg. I didn't believe him. And he said, he told me the story of the circus, and every year they had a different logo. They didn't really know the whole concept of logos. Each season they'd have a sign painter paint them some posters, and whatever lettering he used on the sign, that was their logo for the season. So when the logo came to me to do, I figured it was going to last like a season. And Roger said that the Bringlings and the Barnums and the Baileys all had some influence at the circus. And every year that a new logo came out, the three families would get in a knockdown drag out because somebody's name was bigger than somebody else's. So I knew that everybody's name had to be the same size. The the one that preceded the one I did was a serpentine, and not so instead of a serpentine, I decided I'd do something centered. So, and I told Roger I was only doing one sketch because it's a lot of sketching, and I still didn't believe it was a real job. So that was my sketch. And when Roger called me, he said they liked the logo. We wanted a couple little changes. And then he said they really liked the way it looked like a circus tent. And I went, of course, yeah. So this is the way it wound up finished. And over the years, it's been to a bunch of different lettering artists, different years, and changed a little bit, and then came to me one time, and I digitized it. So the circus have been very, very good to me. There's some more of that lettering. The same SPUR Gothic, except it's become now a typeface called Modesto. So I get something like that in my head, and I just kind of stick with it, like over the decades and stuff. And this happens to me all the time. Like, I'll do something, I'll have some success with it, like 10 years later, somehow it'll just like pop up again. The Orange County Register is in Modesto, just set right off of the computer. I didn't do anything except maybe track the Orange County lettering out a little bit. Excelsior is a daily newspaper in Mexico City that had kind of like crashed and burned, and then they started it up again, and they started it up again with this logo. And this is also just Modesto, and all I did is like tinker around with the E's a little bit. The bottom picture is a picture of the railroad station in Modesto, California, where my mother grew up. Another obsession. Roger mailed me this. No email, I mean like folded up in an envelope. And he said he wanted a whole alphabet of it. I got the thing like Wednesday or Thursday, and they didn't need it until Monday. They're in Los Angeles, and I'm in Oakland. Didn't have any, and by the time I started on it, it was like Friday afternoon. I didn't have stat people or anything, so I went to a day and night drugstore in downtown Oakland that had like a couple different sizes that you could get on your Xerox machine. And I kept jockeying it around until I had enough things that were sort of similar in size that I could try to fake an alphabet. I did this. I saw this the other day and I thought, where the hell did I get that J? It's horrible. But these letters are about 3.5 inches tall. And I just inked and inked and inked. I don't think I drank and I did drugs and I didn't sleep, and I just worked and worked and worked. And Sunday night, I packed it all up in a box and drove out to the Oakland airport, off into the dark, to the cargo area, to a warehouse, knocked on the door, they let me in. That was like their version of Federal Express. So I dropped it off with them, and I said, it'll be in LA tomorrow? And they said, absolutely. And I remember driving home, and I was the sun was coming up. I was just a zombie. I was just thinking, this is unbelievable. It's going to be in LA tomorrow. I was thinking I'm living in a modern world. So this is what they did with it. This is what Roger wanted it for in the first place. And when I saw that, I saw that the E's were all the biggest letters that I had done. They were bigger than the rest of the lowercase. But nobody was interested in correcting it, so it just went that way. And back in those days, before digitizing and stuff, alphabets were just fair game. This would just be like a set of negatives sitting in a flat file in some magazine. And some guy who's like an associate art director goes like, I could use those if I was like working on my own magazine. So like, you know, negatives of alphabets would kind of slide out of offices. This one turned out the cover of Inside Sports Magazine was this lettering. I could always tell because they always kept the big E. It's almost like a secret signature. Here's some more slab serifs. Starting with that kind of Agiziano idea and like pushing it and squeezing it, doing a lot of things in pencil laboriously that you can do on a computer in just a few moments. And I would get these back in the mail from Roger, pieces of Newsweek notepaper with like instructions. When the logo started to come together, Roger did these tests, the one on the left being the old typography and the old logo, the one on the right being the new typography and the new logo. But Roger wanted to use Stevenson Blake number 9, but he felt the headline face on the one on the right was too light. So I drew a font called Newsweek number 9, which is Reagan's Prognosis. All that is like the typeface I did for Roger for Newsweek, and that lasted it was used in all their headlines and whatnot for a while. That's the logo. That's the size I inked the logo. The SWK on the other board, and then like get them shot way down and paste them into a word. Here's some more slab serif. Now this digital, like I decided I wanted to try it again. So I made these fonts. Magazine logos. This is one of the first Esquire logos on the left. What I think of like the golden age of Esquire in the middle 60s, and what happened afterwards on the right. This was with Roger. It's a lot of pencil sketches. Roger wanted, like the cursive from the first one. This was the first logo I did on a Macintosh. And I did it in a single character space of Fontographer. And the way I would do these things would like, I'd print them out, I'd mark them up like the teacher correcting somebody's homework, and then put it back in front of me and like work on it again. So this one is sort of like the weight of the classic one and the cursive of the original one. Sometimes when a thing like this comes, you go like, holy cow, this is a slam dunk. I got to do better than this. It's like Los Angeles Magazine, but it turned out to not be a slam dunk. I think I did like 150 sketches or something. And sometimes when you start feeling the sketches coming on like that, at least me, I start pulling stuff from my font ideas file and like, oh, maybe I'll try this and add a couple more and sort of work on some of my fonts when I'm putting together sketches. These guys, when I think we were up around 150 or something, I finally wrote them a letter saying, look, this is 2 people. I do the sketches and you pick one. I said, it's your turn, you know? And they didn't respond to me for a little while, about a week or something, and then finally they said, we'd like sketch number 12, you know? Could have told me that like a month ago. So anyway, the logo on top is the logo that I got out of that, but the Orange Coast logo came along during that, and it came from one of the sketches I did for the Los Angeles logo. So you can always like, you know, don't throw anything away. Here's a logo. An art director sent me the logo on top. So I just started working at Men's Journal. This is the logo. I hate it. I want to do something new. And I said, well, I'm your man. I'll be happy to do it. And I thought, This is not a good time to tell him that I did the logo on top. So anyway, there's that. Here's one that's like, it's a new fashion magazine. It's new, it's fresh, it's now. I found the logo in a 1895 American Type Founders specimen book. And there's like a photographer proof with my markup on it. And there's the logo. It's the first logo they had, and I think they still use it. 20, 25, 26 years. Okay, here's a logo I had to do. The guy said, I said, what's the name of the magazine? He said, 5280. And I said, well, what's that? He says, that's the elevation of Denver, Colorado. It's the city magazine for Denver. But the reason I'm showing you this is that like I've been doing sketches all my life, and I like put them out on these boards like A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just a guy sitting alone, and my mind starts wandering, and I start thinking, if the sketch number 1, does he think it's my favorite, or does he think it's the first one I did? Then I move to letters, and I go, well, letters, still the same thing. So I started naming them. And not only did that like make it harder for them to figure out which one was my favorite, but it like lightened the whole conversation. The guy phones you up and says, I really like Roberto, you know? It's hard to be serious when that's happening. The Chronicle, I got a job at the San Francisco. Actually, what happened was digital was replacing analog, and I was like an analog guy. I didn't know anything about computers. My work was getting slimmer and slimmer, and I wanted to be a painter, so I thought, I'll get a job. I signed up for the post office exam, and I was going to be a mail carrier. And I was at dinner with some friends one night. I told them, tomorrow I'm taking the test. And they're like, you're nuts, Parkinson. And they worked at the newspapers, and so they said, why don't you go over and talk to them? So I got a job at the Chronicle. And we managed to like work it out to where I was doing like 3 days a week. This is what the Chronicle looked like leading up to a project that a bunch of us did in-house at the Chronicle. But it was sort of like, I'm from the Bay Area, and I always wondered, like, it was always the same layout. It was always like a picture in the middle surrounded by stories, and the job was to like, what story does the picture go with? So I was like sitting in the back of the art department. I was like doing really important news stuff. And the art director at the time, Dennis Gallagher, managed to like give me a copy of Fontographer to play with in the office. And the managing editor was a crusty old dude that started off as a copy boy and was now like in charge. And at one point in his life, he did these things he called rack cards. And that card there would sit on top of a newspaper rack, a metal newspaper rack. And each day they could put like a new card up there, you know. It's like, he was like really proud of those. And when he found out that somebody in the art department was doing typefaces, or could do typefaces, or was trying to learn how to do typefaces, he said, he sent somebody over to my desk with a big stack of these rack cards, and he wanted this typeface. And of course I couldn't do it, because like it was, A, it was really ugly, and B, I think it was like, you know, bad sorting. I think that there was more than one typeface there, you know? So I went here, found something that was like close enough, added a little weight to it. The first time they used it was on this headline. The first time they used any of my computer type on the Chronicle. And when this happened, there was no electricity at the Chronicle. We had like a a gas generator running in the art department. We had 2 Macintoshes running off of it, and the screens are going bright, down and bright, and everybody was going, save, save, save. So I think, like, I remember riding home from work with some people from the art department that lived in the East Bay, and we had to go across the Golden Gate Bridge and the Richmond Bridge because the bridge was down. We were so proud of ourselves because we, like, beat the odds. We got a 8-page newspaper out. It turns out that the editor, who was kind of asleep at the switch, misestimated the death toll by, like, it was 67 people, which is a lot of people, but like hundreds did and a huge quake sounds better, right? So it's funny, when the Chronicle wants to celebrate their performance during the earthquake, they use the second day headline, which is devastation throughout area or something. So I started doing more fonts for the Chronicle, and like somehow, somebody there, Dennis, Eric Youngerman, somebody in our department, managed to convince people at the Chronicle that maybe we should be headed towards like an in-house redesign, which meant that, like, Dennis would be working really hard. There'd be like a lot of politicking going on. Eric was like beat his brains out, like figuring out how all the type was going to fit together and asking me to do this font and asking me to do that font. And here's some of the fonts. I did a couple condensed metros. There's more, that's just a sampling of them. I think I did like different weights and maybe some small caps and stuff. A banner, which was the Henderstead and Huge Quake. I did a few versions of banner. Roswell, ITC Roswell was like, I did what I wanted to do to the Henderstead and Huge Quake typeface, which is like put terminals like Stevenson Blake number 9 has. If you see the ends of the C's, the E's, the S, it has like, it's like most of its personality comes from parts of Stevenson Blake number 9. And later on, I did the same thing to like more of it and did Balboa. ITC said, we only want these many. Okay, I'll do the rest somewhere else. So I did the Balboa as like more of it. And you can see on the lowercase a's exactly how I was like terminating the round characters. Here's a picture of the Chronicle when it looked better than it like used to look. It looked a lot better, thanks mostly to Eric and Dennis. But my little pride part was that there was like a period of 4 or 5 years where I think every typeface in the Chronicle was designed by me. Like stock quotes, news, shipping and receiving, everything. It was great. And I think the first few, like we tried to have almost nothing above the logo. The Chronicles always favored like pounding their logo as far down, close to the fold as possible, like there's some kind of shame or something. And so the first couple, I think there were Eric did a lot of layouts with the logo on top. And then there was a bunch of them with just like one headline with an XREF, but it just kept creeping down, you know? When I got done with the fonts, it was like there was really nothing left for me to do with the Chronicle except to perform maintenance duties on some page, you know, like an editorial page or a food page or something. So I decided to take off. I was only working 3 days a week anyway. It wasn't like a big deal. But after I left the Chronicle, I did Richmond, which was what I would have liked to have done with Metro. And the National Post in Canada asked me to do a geometric Gothic. And I did for another couple of newspapers too. There was like, for a while, there was a little surge of people that liked that. Newspaper nameplates. It's just like Esquire. I asked people for the history of their logo. And I'm hoping that I can find something in it that, like, you know, something I could grab onto to go ahead and make them a logo, and like not get further and further away from who they are, but like maybe get a little closer to who they are. So I did this one. Took a few sketches, and like the last two sketches were this one and one just like it, except with the inlines filled in, so it was black. And I heard afterwards that there were like two factions. There were the faction that said, we like the black because Detroit's a gritty city, you know? And the other ones were saying, well, we like the one with the inline because Detroit's coming back. So apparently the inline won. These people from upstate New York, they like wanted, they were really thrilled. They were changing their name to the Citizen. It was going to happen in a hurry, and they wanted like sketches as fast as they could get them, and the tighter the better. So I did these 5 sketches for the Citizen. I sent them off. This is like digital now, so I like emailed them off. I didn't hear from them. Finally, like, I sent them an email asking them how it's going. And then somebody phones me up and says, Jim, didn't we tell you? I guess not. What? We decided not to change the name of the logo. We're not using the Citizen. So they said, could you redo the logo we're using? And I said, you just pay me for the Citizen, and then I'll do the one you want, you know? And they did it. But it's crazy, like the logo, when they order a logo and then cancel it, wouldn't the logo designer be in that loop? A lot of logos just get retouched in the art department by people that like don't want to do it and claim to not have any talent at doing it. Logos go downhill by accident because editors are not good art directors. I don't know how that top one came together. These are two kind of elegant ones. The San Francisco Examiner was one of the first ones I did, besides the good times. And I did the black letter, and then I did an eagle, and I did the banner, and it was like all just like right where I wanted, but the eagle was like looking more like Donald Duck. And so they found some guy that did good eagles. So, and I don't know, over the years I've run into 3 different people that said, hi, Jim, I'm the guy that did that eagle. 3 guys. Los Angeles Times, I did a couple logos for the Los Angeles Times. And they were like very stiff, like what the logo was originally like. And then the last time I did it for him, I don't know what, something was going on down there, but the art director just said, Michael Whitley said, just make it as good as you can. Just do what you want. And I did that, and they just kept it. They like the way they use it really big on top of the page. I just like expanded the A a little bit to make the LA logo for the Sunday paper, Sunday magazine. So anyway, like magazines are like, maybe the people that work on city magazines like kind of know each other, but like magazines aren't really a community. Like newspapers are a community. So like, I didn't know, you know, like all of a sudden I started getting emails from like out of town, you know, like versus like, you know, Dallas and Miami and stuff like that. But then it starts, Ilta Sanomat is from Finland. And it was just like a kind of a wobbly. It had been retouched and rephotographed too many times. So it was really just a kind of restoration. El Gráfico is a sports magazine from Argentina. It's a brand new logo. They had something that was a lot stiffer before. I think it was like maybe a slab serif, I forget. And Sportawi is from Poland. It's a sports magazine in Poland. And the Sportawi was like so weird because it was like every letter was a different weight. And so I kept playing with it, and I started realizing that there's two consonants, there's an O, there's two consonants, there's an O, there's two consonants. It's got rhythm, you know? So I just made the O's a lighter weight rather than everything a different weight. But the thing about newspapers is you never can tell where the next job's coming from. And you got to be careful when you say yes. The one on top is Malayalam Manorama from northern India. And when I got it, I didn't have any idea what to do with it. But I phoned up a friend who had been a language guy at one of these font companies and said, "Can you tell me what this is?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, it's Malayalam." And he like faxes me like pages and pages of Malayalam in different typefaces, you know? So I could like work out that logo. The one below is a newspaper in Hindustan. And this was mostly like a salvage job, retouch. So I didn't have to do too much research. But it really surprised me. Like, well, at the top one, so I finally sent the logo out. I'm going, oh man, thank God I'm done. This is great. And then a couple of seconds later, I'm going, oh my God, I sent that. I can just see them. And I can see them in the newsroom, like holding their stomachs and laughing and kicking and going, this is the craziest thing we've ever seen. But they didn't. They just came back with one little correction. They circled one thing. It was the bottom of one of the characters. They circled it, and the line came out that said, no. So I undid that. When I do sketches, I do like tons of sketches, and I sketch really tightly now. So these are sketches. A sketch for the Miami Herald. That sketch I showed you earlier from Orange County Register. Like, these are the kinds of things that like people, I spend time on, and people, then they go into some conference room and somebody says, you know, okay, we saw that, 30 seconds. Okay, next, 30 seconds. They don't, you know, these logos don't get to see the outside except for just a few moments. And then they're history. So I just wanted to show you that I've got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like logos that are just as good or better than the ones that are on the newspapers. Just rejects. The PI, they were like, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. We might call it the PI. I'm going like, everybody in Seattle already calls it the PI. You know? What are you talking about? The citizen, of course, is the people that didn't change their name. So fonts. Always wanted to do fonts. Started fonts at HALLMARK. But now, I always liked Speedball. I always liked show card lettering. There's some lettering for a magazine article. There's some lettering for a book of chicken drawings. When I was at HALLMARK, I was like, worked not only with Myron and Rob Roy Kelly was there and Herman Zoff was there, but like Brad Holland was there. We were good buddies. Charlie Barsotti, the cartoonist for the New Yorker, was there. Russell Myers was there, who did Broomhilda. I mean, it was just like filled with talented people. But one weekend, Brad and I had a roll of butcher paper, and one other guy, Gary Peltier, and we just got a bunch of booze and a bunch of snacks. And we spent the whole weekend unrolling this roll of butcher paper and drawing chickens. I don't know why. They got weirder and weirder, and finally, like, we did a book of chicken drawings and called it Chicken Shit. Now I started applying the show card stuff to like fonts. This is like the first digital font I think I had published. It was published by the Font Bureau. Show card Gothic. Thing about it is like, when I did this, I was thinking like, I have no idea if anybody's ever going to buy any of these things or anything. So why waste the time to do a lowercase? You know, like there's no sense in doing like too much work if nobody's going to pay for it. So anyway, a lot of these things only have caps. The Comic Modern in the lower right is Jimbo, which was for Adobe, and it was when they were making multiple master fonts. Bigfoot Sightings is El Grande from, I did this for the Font Bureau. Here's a wood type based one that like has my like fascination for the terminals from Stevenson Grotesque featured again. There's a black letter. Done about 3 black letters, I think. ITC Bodoni. I'm like specialized for like 40 years in doing like great big type, and they say, we'd like you to work on the tiniest Bodoni. So this is like, now I'm kind of off into like layered fonts, color, stuff like that. This is like, I think this is like, got about 5 layers. Down below you can see sort of the options of the ways it can go together. Here's another one. I think this might have 6 layers. There's a lot of options for them. This is Balboa Plus. Sutro shaded, I think. Yeah. With blah blah. And this is one I'm working on right now, which is gonna be like my Winchester Mystery House. It's gonna keep going and going. But I was really wanting to get the phonetics thing going, which is, you can use it or you don't have to use it. It's up to you. But there's going to be all kinds of interior and exterior and shadow treatments to this thing when it gets done. And I went to school to be a painter. So, but all the whole time I was doing analog, I couldn't paint because analog and painting are like not that much different. You can't like ink a lettering all day long and then like go pick up a paintbrush and like paint all night long. So I didn't start painting until digital came along. And that's mostly signs. Mostly, it's entirely signs. These are all oil paintings. They're like from like 1.5 foot to 2 by 2 feet to like 5 feet by 6 feet, you know? This was in downtown Oakland, El Sobrante, New York. Farmington, New Mexico, and Seligman, Arizona. I love this just downtrodden neon signs from like out in the Four Corners, out in the desert, places that like that was somebody's grand idea at one time, and now it's just like dusty and desolate. I like these things. So anyway, this is my talk. Thank you very much.